Welcome to the Old Lady Hour with Lorrie and Sheryl. And today's guest is Loretta Lynn, the most famous living Loretta Lynn. I just have to open with that, Loretta. This is, for those of you who are just joining us, this is part two of our interview. So please listen to part one, but you can listen to them out of order.
For sure.
They're all fascinating. To our millions of listeners out there, we just want to make sure that they know that they don't have to be in chronological order.
True. And big shout out to our sponsor, Fast Lane Auto.
Fast Lane Auto. We're not fast, we're artisanal. Okay. And who you're not hearing today is our producer, Sheryl, who's running the studio for us. We're at Lorrie Lane Studio, which is also, it's not only an art studio, it's also a recording studio for our podcast. And if you're in Tuscaloosa, I should mention that we are at 2420 Gary Fitz Street, downtown Tuscaloosa. All right. Well, Loretta, we've been talking about, finding our people, finding our group, and pushing out of our comfort zone. And so, how have you been pushing out, like with, with art, with and part of doing art really is allowing people to see vulnerable parts of you.
Yes.
So even if it's not like directly personal, you are putting yourself out there visible, especially in visual arts, for all to see. So anyway, so Leah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, as I said in part one last week, part of my vulnerability and pushing out was, again, exactly just what you said, like letting people see not just the safe stuff, the fun stuff, the moon wings, the uteruses, the mermaids on the beach.
Not everyone would consider that safe, but that's all right.
My standards are different.
It's good. This is good. Yeah.
But I started really wanting my own voice and my own experiences to come through, which is what happened in the Finding My Religion show over at Pentuck in February of 2024. And as I said a little bit back then, last week, that people were so receptive to the artwork and also to my story and my art talk. And I have to say, one of the things that made me really nervous about that show, and was that my work straddles that line of having elements from Catholicism fused with things that are more pagan or cult. And I was really, worried that people in Alabama, other than my friends, I was afraid that people would feel that this was somehow, I don't know, a sin or inappropriate or,
heresy.
I was going to be burned at the stake like a witch, right? I mean, just because honestly,
don't give anyone ideas.
Well, yeah, that's true. Because, I was just, it's the South, and it can still be more conservative.
It's a little more traditional, although Catholicism in the South isn't necessarily traditional either.
That's true, which is right. So I'm already.
You're already a little outside. I do remember we were at the Catholic Church here. My husband's raised Catholic, and my daughter was being raised Catholic. And in 6th grade, one of her teachers asked each of the kids like what church they went to. Which, okay, it's a public school, but and our daughter did say Catholic Church, and she said, "Well, that's not Christian." So
you're like, "Excuse me?"
Yeah. So, or she asked if that was, and I'm like, "Well, I think it was kind of the original one." So.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so they're already sort of, Catholics are already walking a fine line.
It's already a little bit, and and I feel like that, and I was not raised Catholic, and so I did kind of envy many of my friends were, and so they had like a really pretty church, and they had lots of pretty statues and a lot of art. So I think there's definitely that tradition of visual arts in the Catholic Church, and the saints are kind of like it's kind of yeah, but it's also not completely. I mean, this would be heresy, but if you think about it, it's a little more pagan already because it's already.
Oh yeah,
it can be more polytheistic. So.
Oh right.
It is more fun.
It is more. I mean, and again, the rituals are part of it. I'm a very
Yeah, the liturgy and everything
Mhm.
is more, it's just, it's not someone praying for a very long time, which,
Right.
or a very long sermons. Yeah.
Right. So I was a little bit nervous on how that was going to be received. Um, but like I said, I mean, I talked openly. And again, part of my story is that, I lived fast and hard when I was young and went to rehab at a very young age. And it's not always easy putting that stuff out there to people that you don't know,
Right.
because of judgment and,
Sure.
but I feel like my kids are old enough now that it's not, you know what I mean? And I'm a very, I'm a very different person and all that. But, putting that stuff out there is hard, but I think it helps people understand more about my process and my art. And sometimes I think it's really important to know the story behind the artist and why they are creating what they do.
Yeah. And I
And
noticed one of the things you haven't really mentioned is technique, or worried about. So because most people do kind of worry about that. But it's kind of nice that you're not even.
oh, I mean, I guess my technique doesn't exist.
Okay, no, because I think no, it really does, because they really are, and we'll try to put some pictures up on, and so people can
Okay.
see some of
That
the
is
work.
the part. I mean, I have to say, like that, for whatever reason, like I'm self-taught,
Right,
so I
but
truly,
well, so am I. But so yeah, yeah.
yeah, but like I'm really kind of
Well, I mean, I think what you do is more experimental,
more experimental, more folk.
but I mean, I think that's refreshing to like all your worries about it, or all your thoughts about it, or all your artistic ideas are really about the ideas themselves, or where they're coming
Yeah,
from.
that's what I try.
Yeah.
I say I try not to get hung up on the technique aspect of things, but if you talk to Casey or Aaron, they might
Okay.
tell you
All
otherwise
right.
because they get the frantic calls from me going like, "This is garbage. I'm throwing it in the garbage," and then being like, "Why didn't I win a ribbon for my garbage?" But no, so yeah, I have all of these visions and ideas in my head, but like because I mean, I've taken workshops certainly, but like I've never really taken technique or skill classes. I remember years ago, before I even had kids, getting that book, Drawing from the Right Side of the
Right.
Brain, which
Right.
everybody has probably read at some point if you're
Yeah.
making art, and doing those kind of exercises. And even like on Chris and I, back on our honeymoon, we had sketchbooks and we were like drawing things together.
Okay.
And I was so jealous and mad because he has such a natural ability to like look at something and draw it kind of realistically, and mine just looks bananas. And so I realized, but then like what I'm doing now, people are responsive to it and
Well,
they seem to like it.
I,
So I
yeah,
don't know.
I don't know if you've ever read anything by Linda Berry.
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, I recommend that.
Okay.
And I don't have anything uh, at the top of my head, the names of her books. She was sponsored. She does a lot of drawing and writing, but a lot about creativity.
Oh, cool.
And she will say, like, it doesn't, like, people stop drawing because they can't draw like nose,
I think that's right.
or they can't draw, and she's like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so she does a lot of work with young children and pairing them up with like PhD students. And anyway, her philosophy is great. But
I gotta check that out.
she gave a talk here, sponsored by the English department, and it was in 2019 because it was right before I was at the Bama,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I had was just trying to get the lease on this building,
Okay.
and I was like, that was like for me a big leap. And I had heard this very inspirational talk, and I mean, I probably knew everyone that was there. And I remember pointing across the street after the talk and saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna have an art gallery there." And it
Oh
was
my
like this
goodness.
really, yeah. So it was
One of
felt
those
like,
moments.
yeah, one of those moments
Full
of like,
circle.
it doesn't matter if you don't
Mm-hmm.
know what you're doing, just go ahead and do
It
it.
doesn't matter. Just do what you're doing. But I mean, I think it's funny because yes, like I have confidence in what I want to express and in my ideas, but you're right. Like I never thought of it in terms of like the thing that I'm most insecure about is indeed my technique because it's so raw and unskilled and all over the place. And it's funny because my son Lux is doing his BFA and he is also a visual artist. He does more of digital mediums, but he's very much into realism and anatomy and life drawing and stuff. So sometimes I'll have him look at some of my stuff, and he's just, you can tell, like, he wants to be supportive, but it's like the way I draw a hand and the way he would draw a hand are totally different. Like, technically, because he'll be like, if you think about the muscles in the hand or whatever, and I'm like, nah, I just want to know, is this read as a hand? Can you tell it's a hand? And he was like, yeah, I mean, you can tell it's a hand, but like anatomically, like that's not the way I would make it. It's like, okay.
Well, so this is the interesting thing, which is passing art through the generations.
So cool.
Did you have anyone in your family previously that did art, or you were the first one out?
I mean, I kind of feel like, yeah, like, well, I mean, I think not as art, but certainly, my mother's side of the family were immigrants from Italy, and did sewing and made like rag rugs. I have one of my great grandmother's rag rugs at my house. So there were things that were more in that sort of craft fiber in terms of functionality rather than just art. But yeah, I mean, in terms of my like immediate family and stuff,
and so you just like that. I'm always curious about that. Like, where did these impulses come from? And especially when you can see why Lux maybe like he's inspired by you, and it's really but then
no, but right, like we grew up, I mean, my kids grew up with us always exposing them to art and culture and taking them to museums.
So they just think
and
it's
I
normal.
did, right. But I mean, I will say, like, my mom, when I was little, I mean, she always took me to library hours and, tried to provide enrichment and culture, but in a different way, I think.
Right. It's visual arts, it's a little bit more specialized.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I have the nice thing for me with having a daughter who's a full-time visual artist. That's so fun. Cool. And it's fun to like some of the things I was doing early on that no one really around in Tuscaloosa or even in my family, they didn't really know what I was doing, going to some of the shows that I did and having some of the gallery experiences. And now she's having those. So like we can like, okay, now you know what I was talking about.
It's so cool, right? Lux comes out, like he comes out of his little lair at like midnight. And like, I'm in my area working, and he'll come and he'll sit on the couch and he'll show me what he's working on. And again, it's really funny because he'll show me like he's drawn 100 skulls, like the same skull from different angles, which to me is like,
you couldn't do it.
No, I don't have the attention span for that. So, or the technical ability, but it's like, so we'll show each other what we're working on and give each other feedback and talk a lot about the process and, and I love those moments so much. And he recently did the Loop Festival with us. We had 4 of us that went to Dothan to do the Loop Festival, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And where
so the Loop Festival is in Dothan, Dothan, Alabama. So it's like 4 hours from here. And Holly Meyer is one of the organizers involved. And many of you may remember her from when she was living in Tuscaloosa.
She was also working at Kentuck.
She was and I love that her and Erin were both working at Kentuck, and now they have both become absolute mover and shakers in the art world. Like she's doing arts in public places down in Dothan, and and the Loop Festival, and has her own gallery. And Erin has his space in Greensboro and does teaching workshops all over the place, and is providing workshops and shows, and it's just really exciting to me to remember them working at that gallery at Kentuck.
Yeah, and you never know how you're going to influence someone or encourage them to keep going. So I'm going to let's make a quick stop on some promotional things if you want to see Loretta's work.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. So, and again, I think this ties a little bit into pushing outside of one's comfort zones. So the dates will be forthcoming, but I am having another solo show, my second solo show in September at Sumac Cottage, which is Erin Head's love child.
That's in Greensboro.
In Greensboro,
Alabama. And if you want a nice trip from this area, or Greensboro is becoming a hot little art town.
It is.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
It's really pretty.
very special.
It is. It's a small place. But it's
Good people.
Yeah.
Good stuff. And yes. So, but prior to that, in August, Aaron always works with the Alabama Audubon Society to do a bird festival, the Alabama Bird Fest, and there's usually a market. And this year, he just put out an art call today.
I saw that.
Yes, you should submit.
Yeah. The theme is
Nests, which
and
is super cool.
yeah, I've painted birds' nests for years and years. So yeah, I'm sure that I would like to be part of that.
Yes, so
myself.
the art call is open on that until June 30th, and the show will be from August 1st to 30th. So in addition to the vendors that sell, and I've been doing that for a number of years now, there will be this group juried show, which is cool.
And then you have a workshop coming up. Would you like to?
Yeah. So I'm thinking. Well, first of all, even before the workshop, I'm going like from farthest thing back to this way. I'm going reverse order.
That's fine.
So that's all right. So
we're old ladies.
So on June, what is it, 6th, first Friday? The next first Friday.
It is first Friday. That's right.
I have 2 pieces that will be in the juried Kentuck Members Art Show at the Tuscaloosa location.
Okay, the old Queen City Pool.
The old Queen City Pool and Transportation Museum. And there will, if you haven't been over there lately, the Edward Guy collection is up, which is, if you like folk art, it will blow your mind. It is so
He's
good.
been collecting for decades,
years, yes.
Really.
And it's a beautiful show, and I believe some of the stuff will still be up there, but it will also be the jury members show. So I have 2 pieces in that, and that is first Friday, and then you can tie into coming up to Lorrie Lane Studio in Washington.
Yeah, we will be here for first Friday. So that is one problem. I miss all the openings because I'm here, but come visit us here. We'll have.
She has really good snacks.
We have the best food. We have the best snacks because I know what people like to eat, not what they say they like.
Yep, candy.
Yeah, I think I usually have like Oreos and Cheez-Its. Yeah. It's not healthy, but it's good snacks.
And wine. And wine.
Yeah, well, yeah. Adult beverages.
So that is the next thing that I have on my plate, and then between that and Bird Fest and then solo show is I am bringing back for the second time Stains of Midsommar, which is a workshop that I'll be doing at Kentuck on summer solstice, which I love that it worked out on summer solstice this
on
year.
The actual day.
Is on the actual day. And again, because whenever I'm asked about teaching a workshop, as I just said, like my technique is the thing that I'm least secure about because I feel like it's also just so chaotic and so personalized, and I don't really have the.
But you're going, but
I'm right. So I do. The workshop we did last year and which I'll be doing again this year is much more process oriented. We will be making art, but it should not scare anybody. It can be open. You don't have ever had to make art before in your life.
The instructions that I saw said to bring a hammer.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of fear involved. Like
it's good to be a little bit afraid.
A little bit afraid. Bring your hammer.
We want to push people out of their comfort zone.
They are. So I think guiding people as you're also learning is a really good way to teach.
So and again, part of, I think one of the things that people responded to in that first solo show that I did was my process and the way that I would go out into nature and then sort of bring it back into archetypes and collective unconscious themes. And so when Kentuck asked me if I would do a workshop, I thought that it seemed only natural to try to do something that would kind of was in line with that idea. And the idea of summer solstice being, the longest day of the year, and sort of a pivotal time in terms of, paganism. When you think about the natural world and the seasons, everything has been planted, everything is growing, and summer is this kind of time where you can just sort of, people take vacations, people relax, people sort of are like, they take that breath. And so it's kind of a way where we will be working on harnessing some of the magic of nature by pounding flowers onto fabric and learning some very basic stitches And then I will also kind of just lead us through almost like a guided meditation and some questions, to ask yourself about how you relax and what your needs are. And very much more of a sort of creative arts therapy sort of process, um, just to help people really give a gift to themselves and learn a little bit about, where they're feeling, where in their bodies are they feeling movement, where are they stuck, and how can they, create something for themselves. And then hopefully you can take that piece of fabric away with you. And, you know, during the summer, you can like look at it, you can journal it, you can, if you have, like for me, I have altar space. So it's like something that kind of is a grounding reminder of like, oh yeah, I need to slow down, or I need to do this or that. Something that will hopefully be beneficial to people in terms of just kind of like giving to themselves and allowing themselves to see what comes up. Because sometimes I feel like when you're just exploring and creating and playing and you don't have something like a certain technique or structure in mind, it allows these sort of unconscious thoughts and feelings to arise that maybe you haven't really thought about. It's, Jung talks about active imagination, in that kind of space between when, it's like, when you're falling asleep and you're not quite there, and certain ideas or thoughts or images. I got to tell you, a lot of like my art inspiration pops up in those spaces, and I take out my phone and like try to like write a note so I don't forget. Because it's like those moments where your guard and your defense mechanisms are lowered so that like this sort of more unconscious, more vulnerable, more raw material can kind of rise to the surface. And I think you can say the same about dreams or, meditations or mindful practice. So, hopefully the act of exploring will resonate for participants in some way that they can use to feel more connected to themselves and more connected to the divine world.
That sounds wonderful. We're all going to be signed up.
Yeah, how can people sign up for that?
Oh, go to the Kentuck website.
Okay.
And
Kentuck.org.
Yeah. And if you look in their calendar or upcoming events, you should see Stains of Midsommar. And there are still spots open for that. We did after last year. I was so nervous last year because it was the first time I was doing anything like this. So I was like, okay, it's going to be 2 hours. And that felt like such a long time for me. But one of the things we realized this year is it's going to be 3 hours because I thought it was going to be long, but it was not long enough.
When I've had my experience teaching is I'm always worried that I won't have enough for everyone to do. And then and I have like 5 times too much for people to do.
Right. And the thing that I really want to make sure that people have the ability to do, because there is, a very introspective piece and part to this. And I want people to be able to sit with themselves and really create and be with themselves and to have enough time.
And it's really an experience.
It's an experience.
So
yes.
Bang their hammers.
Bang your hammer.
Bang the hammers. I want to pivot just a little bit to go way back to a project that Loretta and I worked on together.
Oh yeah.
Back during the bad days of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
I've mentioned this before, but I had started an information group about COVID, and a lot of it had to do because I was Facebook friends at the time with Loretta. Didn't know you very well at that point, but I saw that you were looking for a place to do testing
because one of my sons was very sick, and it was really, really and soon in. It was March of 2020.
It was March of 2020, and I think it was like the 12th or the 13th because I was in this space. I had opened just a few months before, and I'm like, also I was trying to figure out what events were still going on, and I couldn't find anything, anyone saying anything about it. So I thought, well, I'll just start an information group, and I went to a meeting. While I was in the meeting, I looked down on my phone, and at least 5,000 people, 7,000 people had joined, and then it ended up, again with over 20,000 members.
It was wild.
And Loretta was one of the admins, and our loyal admin, and we had a wild virtual time. It was, and then of course Sheryl was part of that and was part of the mask makers in the group. So
you made something like, I don't know,
1,600 masks.
masks.
And
the community were
this
really
is
really
how
came together.
this is how we met, and so here we are. So there were some good things that happened, and I feel like that group was it was
a wild time.
it was like living in a book in a way, because
someday you have to write a book based on that.
But all of our conversations were just text.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
yeah, there were some people that some of our early admins we didn't even know in real life, but they were science people,
right.
And you know, and there were different people came and went.
Some people just jumped in because they saw me floundering, because
I don't think that's true. I don't think you were floundering.
I was being that one
you
time,
were being attacked.
I got attacked, and so they were like helping me out because I didn't know how to stop it, because I'm kind of like a nice person, and so I didn't know how to like respond to people that were
just so ill. So
ugly. And you know, a stressful time for a lot of people, so we understand that.
We did, but there were some things that were very scary, and so as soon as
we do I didn't really.
We didn't know what we were getting into.
And that was outside of our comfort zone.
It was really outside of our comfort zone.
And at one point, you know, people were asking us technical medical questions because no one knew. I kept waiting for someone who knows something's going to jump in here and give us all the information. It never happened. And at some point, we're like, "Look, I'm a visual artist. You're a dance therapist.
We're like stay-at-home mom.
We're like stay-at-home mom. We're like." We're the ones that are like suddenly we're in charge of like giving.
Who did that? Who put us in charge?
Yeah, and you know, I anyway, that was probably the farthest out of my zone that.
And you went further. I mean, Lorrie also, though, I have to say, so I think I was the first or second admin that you put on. I was one of the early ones
right away.
And stayed.
Yeah.
But I have to say, like, as things exploded and got bigger and bigger, Lorrie was still reading like all of the individual messages that were coming through, and I was like, "Girl,
so for a while, because people were so isolated,
they were
messaging me all the time, and they didn't have a lot of people had like nowhere to turn, and so I felt bad, like, but I couldn't really help them, but
it would end up getting where
sometimes the message it was just they were just lonely. Sometimes they were,
but sometimes they were hostile.
They were extremely hostile. I got threats. Yeah,
yes, she did, and that's why I stopped. Once the threats started coming in, I was like, I can't check the personal messages anymore because it's too stressful.
The only thing I was worried about, and this relates to the studios, I had a store downtown, and I wasn't here a lot. I ended up coming down anyway to use it, but I was going to put a sign on the building, and I waited because I didn't want my name, because it's my name up there, and I thought, well, someone driving down Lorrie Lane's going to throw a brick through my window. That's really what I worried about.
That's not being paranoid. That's because she directly got messages saying, "I know where your studio is and that you're alone in there." Like, it was scary.
It was a little trying, but you know, we got through it, and we're on the other side of it, and it's that part's good.
I'm so glad that part is over.
But that was just a little bit of our background.
Yes. Which definitely formed, I think, a bond for life.
Yes.
Because once you've been threatened, once you have death threats thrown at you,
and just I feel like we felt the weight of the community, because I wanted to quit right away. I didn't. I was like, okay, no, this is a bad idea. I want to stop. And we had your good friend who jumped in and said, no, I'll help you out if you keep going, because we need this. And so you felt like now it wasn't just, now I felt responsible. So I felt like if we stopped our mission that we didn't want, and we didn't want to do any of this, but now we have to, because people are relying on us.
And people wanted us to keep going after vaccines came out, but you were like, nope, it's done.
It's done. And one of the things that tied into art somewhat was that on the form that Facebook used, there was a banner, and so I just started putting up different paintings up there, mostly just like so people, they're sitting there bored looking at their computer all day. So like I started putting different paintings, and then Loretta, I think I put
One of mine was up.
one of your stitching art. Um, and this is what Sheryl said she was drawn to, is why she was like even looking at the group. And I mean, I just change it pretty often. So we had a lot of months to do that. But sometimes it was just like the art that I put up was just really to give people something to look at.
Right, which reminds me of the thing that Deborah Hughes does at the University Medical Center.
So
the art in the
right. So Deborah Hughes does have a program, and she's done it for years now. I think it's wellness walls, and so at the University Medical Center, I will be doing a show there this fall.
Oh, cool.
I think. Well, and I often do. It's just I have a lot of paintings. When you've been painting a long time, it's just like sometimes it's just storage problems, and so so I have to get them out
But
there.
it's nice, I mean, it's cool to be in it, when you're going through something stressful or scary, it's nice to be able to kind of get lost
just to be able to, So we just wanted to share that. And then the other thing that if you wanted to touch on was your dance therapy.
Oh yeah, sure.
Because that is what you do, and I think a lot of people don't know what that is.
Yes, and it's interesting because when I moved to Alabama, I was one of 2 dance therapists in the state. We recently do have a Birmingham woman who graduated recently, but I think they are going to be relocating out of the state, but that's pretty cool and exciting. But I mean, this is back in New York State where I was licensed as a creative arts therapist. And when I was working at Woodhull Medical Center, I mean, we had an entire department. There were over 20 of us who, each psychiatric unit had 2 creative arts therapists of different modalities on each floor, as well as having people in detox. So that was a big change. And I also went from working in inpatient psychiatry to working with children with disabilities. So a huge population shift. So I have a master's degree in dance movement therapy from Pratt Institute. And like I said, in New York State, there is a license. I was licensed as a creative arts therapist through the state education department. They don't have a license for such in Alabama. But I am credentialed through the American Dance Therapy Association as a board certified dance movement therapist. And I mean, the goals, so now I work in a school system and I work in self-contained classrooms running from 3-year-old preschool classes all the way up to our super seniors who age out at 21.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I do a lot of groups, a lot of ages, and multiple abilities. So it's it's not uncommon for me to have most of my classes have people with both physical, intellectual disabilities, as well as some sort of neurodivergence. A lot of students on the autism spectrum or with ADHD. Some students are verbal, some are not. Some have behaviors, some do not. Some need a lot of support, some do not. But I basically provide them with weekly services. And the goals so it's very different, right? When I was working in inpatient psychiatry, we're thinking of more along the lines of decreasing isolation, helping people organize, building up kind of what we would call ego strengths, right? Because when you're in a psychiatric hospital, you're kind of spilling all over the place in terms of like your reality and your ability to cope. So we want to shore up those defenses so that you can go out and continue treatment on an outpatient basis without feeling like you are going to potentially hurt or be hurt or, be a danger to yourself or other people, right? So it's a very different kind of focus. Whereas with the kids that I'm working with here, a lot of my goals and objectives focus on, helping them with communication issues. I mean, most of our communication is nonverbal and with our bodies anyway, right?
It is.
So there's a whole language in and of itself there. But to help with expression, and receptivity, understanding, communicating with our bodies or with words. Because again, when you're engaged in things, music uses a different part of your brain than just trying to do language without having that music and that rhythm.
That's right.
And a lot of times I'm sure that some of some of my teachers are probably like, sing my hello and goodbye songs and some of my little ditties in their sleep, because they can be
They can
simple
hear
and
it.
repetitive. And it's like, yeah, they hear it all the time, but I have to say some over my 15 years doing this work, there have been kids who will sort of that pre-Babylon language will be in the tune to my songs. I've heard, I do so and so is rocking, 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 so and so is rocking on the ball. And you do that enough times, and eventually you'll hear a kid say ball. So I'm not saying it's 100% this for every student, but you can see that, like, doing things using your body kinesthetically, adding rhythm, adding music to it works in a different way.
Well, but doesn't this make sense?
Yes.
As part of, we're humans, and I feel like there's a misnomer about schooling that takes the humanness out of it.
Yeah.
So the very things that make us
play and rhythm,
music, art, dance, moving
those are
your
always
body.
the first things to be cut.
But why? Because that's how we learn.
Yeah.
And so why? But we learning it in a different way, and you cannot put it on a standardized test.
You cannot put it on a stand. And I have to say, I'm very, I'm very appreciative that the school system continues to invest and support creative arts
great.
therapists.
And I'm sure they're really happy to have you, because it's rare. So
it is, and a lot of I don't think I think it varies from like age and schools, but I think that a lot of the students that need more support don't have access to be able to like go to a regular art or music class. Some people do, some people push out for things, but some don't. And so it really allows them to have this other experience with somebody other than the people that they're in the classroom with every day. And I feel like it's been, very beneficial. So we're working on communication skills. We're working on peer interactions and social skills, taking turns and sharing and connecting with each other. We're learning about, and one of the big pieces I think that my work does in special education and dance therapy is to help them integrate different sensory systems, and proprioception in particular. Proprioception is where it's how our bodies know where we are in space.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, one of the first things that people might see when they're questioning that maybe their child has a potential disability or issue with something is that you hear parents often say that their kids are very clumsy. They're bumping into things. They're seeking out like, really intense like activity where like all they want to do is like spin in circles.
Yes.
And so that is all about vestibular and proprioceptive input. And if we can provide, and again, occupational therapy provides, some of this as well, a lot of it. But I can sort of craft it in a different way. I'm an independent contractor. And I've been with school system now for, almost 15 years. So they pretty much trust me, and, I have a good reputation. So they're kind of like, just let her do her thing.
Go ahead. But I think, I guess I've never thought about.
Yeah. So
that you just know where you are in space.
Right. So not everybody does. And when you see somebody, right. So when you have a kid that's constantly breaking things, that's constantly knocking into things, that, like that may be an indicator that they might have a sensory processing thing happening.
That makes sense.
Right. So part of dance movement therapy, what we do is we really work on helping them develop body awareness, spatial awareness, and we provide them input that is going to satisfy certain areas that need that kind of regulation. So if I know that a student is really super high intensity, one of the things I might do is bring in a mini trampoline and have them jump, 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 and then have a giant pillow that they can crash and land in. You have to be able to provide this input. And I think all too often in our world, in our society, our impulse is to take these disruptive kids, often which are our boys, and to make them want to learn to behave and to stop this behavior
and to sit
and to
quietly.
sit quietly. But but if this is the way their nervous system and their brains need this input, then we have to be able to provide them with it.
And we need them. We need
them. We
we
need
need-
these thinkers. We need
Right.
these kind of people.
we need them outside. So then I wanted to jump briefly into the fact that you have triplets.
Yes.
And I mean, you don't have to say much, or you can say a lot, but what has it been? I mean, that is an unusual experience, I think.
Yes, but I've never known any difference.
So this is just
it's I mean, and they are all very different, and they're similar.
They've gone their
different.
own ways at this
Yes.
point.
Yes, one time a friend referred to them as like a red, yellow, and green light, and I think
that's
that
really
that
funny.
I think that kind of works. Like they have certain things that are very similar with, but the way they approach life, and it can also be really different.
How old are they?
They will be 22 in August, which is wild.
One of them just graduated.
One of them just graduated from the University of Alabama.
But it also that their age changes your category.
Oh yeah.
Of how in that I feel like having the two jobs that you have now kind of helps.
Oh, for sure. And let me tell you, that first year, they all moved out as college freshmen. Never in a million years would I have thought I would have found myself mopping my kitchen floor, listening to Landslide from Fleetwood Mac and just sobbing. Yeah, there I was. I mean, because like I've had this circus to manage, a wonderful circus, but to have them all leave me at the same time,
it's rough.
It was real rough.
It's rough.
It has been my art and my art community, and the fact that I do have all these other children in the schools that need me and that I absolutely love and adore and can shower love upon. That
right.
make me be able to feel like, okay, I'm gonna be okay.
Well, there are parents that are happy when they have the empty nest.
Yeah, that was never me.
It's not me either, and so it's just that you don't realize that was our social life. It was the kids,
right?
Because our friends now are kind of boring. Sorry, friends, no, you're not really, but you
got to hang out with younger ones like I do.
There's such an energy.
There's such an energy.
And you have to be up for it. And so you get used to it. Like a little adrenaline high with the kids.
Yeah. And it was like full on. I mean, the early days when none of them could walk and they were all breastfeeding and none of them could talk. And I was living in a teeny tiny, for triplets anyway, 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. Like our triplet stroller was bigger than the elevator. So when I would try to get them, I used to walk them to Prospect Park, and I would have to like load them all in the stroller and then like tip the carriage so that the wheels were half up in the air just to get them in the elevator and out when we had to go to the basement because I had to have that ramp to get us out. It was wild. But I mean, parenting, being their mother is like been the greatest gift and the most fulfilling thing. Like I love being their mom. I love being a mom. And, even though they're older, the relationships shift and change, but it's still
still
wonderful.
There. Yeah.
It's still wonderful. And I've been lucky enough to, after that first year, the two that were you were at UA, realized that with scholarships, they could get paid going to school. So moved back home. So I've got a little bit of a buffer there, which has been good. But like I said, it's really nice because, Lux will come out. We both do art. We'll talk at night. Yeah. We'll show each other our stuff. And
I mean, it's really great to have adult children because now they're
now we're friends.
You can hang out with them.
We can, yes, and you can talk to them on this totally different level.
It is. It's good, and I feel like as let's just say, as we're becoming old ladies, having our kids as friends makes us cool. So.
It is, but again, the idea of making community is also I'm so grateful that I have that in my life because they do have their own lives and their own
Sure.
friends and their
Yeah.
own jobs and
Yeah.
things. So being able to like go to Greensboro or go to Marion and hang out with my coven, you know, as
That's
I call
right.
them, you
Yep.
know, my and create and make things and go on adventures, you know, is just it's wild.
It's just
It's
the
good.
next stage of our life that I think can be really full.
Exactly. And that's, I guess, you know, I was always so afraid of this moment because I felt like what will become of me when I'm no longer a mother. And I realized that
But
I'm
you
still a
still,
mother.
yeah.
I'm still a mother and I still have really amazing people that I can deepen my connections to. And again, it's that idea of pushing out of your comfort zone, but you gotta be frustrated in order to grow. You know, when a baby learns how to walk, if they gave up the first time they fell down and people say, oh no, you don't have to get up, it's fine, you know, they'd be carried around on a hip forever. But they fall down, they get hurt, they cry, and then they keep pushing themselves up. And enough times of being frustrated leads to that resiliency and pushes them forward, you know. And I'm lucky enough to have friends that also, you know, even with my art, push me out of my comfort zone. One of the current pieces that I'm working on, we mentioned earlier that I have the show in September at Sumac Cottage, and Erin Head, who's a textile artist, has been a huge mentor and friend to me. And I also think it's really cool that like some of my closest friends and teachers, you know, the people that I learned so much from artistically are so much younger than me too.
Right. I mean,
It's
but
so cool. I love it.
It is.
There's no, you know, you don't have to be a master. Age and being a master of your
right.
craft
And
doesn't have to be.
that's right. And
You
I
know.
think we can learn from
So
everyone.
learn from so
and,
much.
and part of like, you don't create art in an isolated way.
Correct.
We just need each other.
Yes. And so Aaron has been pushing me for a while to, as he says, move outside the hoop and to work bigger.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, because your work has been
it's small, right? Yeah. My stuff tends to be on the smaller level. And big has been very intimidating to me, I think, because I don't have the technical training. So, you know, imagining how to do something on a bigger scale is very scary. But he said, you know, with the show, he'd like a couple of bigger pieces, which really sort of forced me out of my comfort zone. And with a little technical help from my friend Ian and my son Lux, I was able to get something in Procreate that I would draw, you know, do on a smaller scale, normal kind of scale for me. And they helped me put together, like, connect it to a projector so that I could take the drawing and project it on a bigger scale and then at least kind of like flush out the lines.
Sure.
So that like I didn't have to worry about how am I going to draw this so big.
Right.
And so that's something that I'm currently working on. I'm working on this one piece that, and again, we talked about the natural world and archetypes. And right now I've been thinking a lot about flames and fire and, you know, that flame and fire archetype. And, you know, again, I think on the, you know, one side, it's like, you know, can be all about passion and desire and cleansing, you know, but on the other side, I'm also an incredibly anxious person. You know, I have obsessive compulsive disorder, I have ADHD, I have a lot of anxiety, and I think that the fire also can be part of that and like this level of, you know, what it means in destruction. You know, it's that whole idea of destruction and creation and those archetypes. And so anyway, I'm working on this large scale piece right now that involves a woman that's kind of engulfed in jumping out of flames. And there's those elements of I'm doing it on an onion skin dyed palette, and I've used some flour pounding that I've already started to put in it. So again, kind of tying in all of these elements and trying to synthesize both elements of the shadow and the hero, you know, so to speak. So it's kind of exciting.
It's very exciting, and I think the scale is interesting because I think I did also start work. Most of my work was really small, and I did a lot of like ink and watercolor. And I think once you start working big, it's it's harder to walk past it.
Yeah.
So you are more noticeable. So I think there is that taking up space.
Yeah, that is a really good thing.
So
to
yeah,
think
I said my current tagline, I don't think I've said, was that I'm large and unavoidable.
about.
And so, which if you see me in person, I wouldn't, I'm not, I'm 5'2".
It's a little ironic.
We're like
yeah.
chihuahuas.
Yeah. I'm probably not even 5'2" anymore, probably like 5 feet. But anyway, yeah, but I want to take up space. I want to be able to like,
Gosh, and that's so interesting for me because in
Yeah.
some ways I feel like with my extroverted personality, like I do take up a lot of space, but in other ways,
yeah,
like,
and I think that scaling
it's
up,
scary.
scaling up the art is
Yeah.
literally doing that, and being giving yourself permission to
She's
take
wild.
that, yeah. So that, and I think it's more than just like physically making a bigger object. I think it's
think you're right.
saying I can take this much space. So yeah.
I'm gonna have to journal about that.
I know.
That's a whole other level to it.
So I think
Which
this
is what I
is
like to
this
do.
is a good place to end our
Well, thank
our
you so
wonderful
much.
interview. Thank you so much, Loretta. This has been so educational. So everyone, all our listeners are now so much smarter than they were.
I don't know
when they
about that,
started.
but follow me if you're not following
Oh,
me
yeah.
already on Instagram. I'm Knittin' Stitches, KNITTEN STITCHES on Instagram, and I also am Loretta J. Lynn Fiber Artist on Facebook. Follow Sumac Cottage if you want to be looped into my solo show. First Fridays on Instagram as well. Isn't there First Friday?
I think it's, I don't know. Anyway, just come on
Lorrie
First
Lane.
Friday. Yeah, follow.
And of course, Kentuck Art Gallery.
Lorrie Lane on Instagram. I just have my old Lorrie Lane on Facebook. Lorrie, I have a website too.
Yes, you do.
Which we never keep up with, but it's
Oh, yes, we do.
LorrieLaneArt.com. Yes, we do.
Yeah, and I also, I intentionally tried to drop a lot of artist names around
Yes,
that are
you
local
did.
and
Yeah.
regional. So
Yeah.
give them a follow. Great stuff out
And even
there.
if you're listening from, some place pretty far away, you can still see us virtually.
Which is super cool.
Or come for a visit because we're a great space. I wouldn't advise like August. Maybe August isn't a good.
Although that's when Bird Festival
That
is.
is when Bird Festival, but it's just like, yeah.
It's hot,
it's
but
hot.
that's okay. Then you can go cool off and take a swim in Lake Nichols.
It's really good for your pores.
Yeah.
That humidity.
And certain people's hair.
Yeah, no, my hair.
Maybe not mine.
My
but
hair
other
gets
people.
big. Yeah.
It'll be very conditioned.
Well, Sheryl, it's time to watch my
Sheryl
shows.
It's time to watch Isn't General Hospital or One Life to Live On or something.
The Young and the Restless.
Gotta watch my shows.
Gotta watch our shows.
Dun, 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 dun. We're out.